Okay, hi everybody. We're at Masechet Eruvin, Daf Lamed Vav 36. Very interesting daf, a lot of conceptual cases. We're going to be talking about cases of doubt, continuing the Mishnah from yesterday. We're going to need to resolve a resolution for the Biyoseh, which I'll show you in a minute. Then we're going to be talking about another case of doubt where I have two loaves, and so I'm not sure which is which. The second case. Third case is doubt that arising from twilight ben hashemashot, and what is that status? And two subcases there. So all those are cases of doubt, and that'll conclude the first Mishnah. And then we have another Mishnah about berira, which means retroactive designation. And this is where it's also a case of doubt, but actually a doubt that I create. I create an indeterminacy, which I later resolve. So these are all extremely interesting cases, as we will see. Okay, in the Mishnah, just to review this case quickly from yesterday, we have a case, let's say I have eruv made out of teruma, and the teruma has to be tahor. It became tameh. I'm not sure when it became tameh. Was it the day before, was it during maybe al-jom, before it got dark? In that case, there's no eruv, because eruv has to be edible at that time. However, if it became tameh after it got dark, then it's totally fine. Because I'm not sure, so that's what machloket. Safek, Rabbi Meir and his colleagues say are stringent. They say no good. Rabbi Yoseh and Rabbi Shimon say Safek eruv kasher. Interestingly, Rabbi Yoseh has a double formulation. He said it once, and then again it quotes him in the name of Abtolmos, who testified in the name of 5 elders that Safek eruv kasher. All right, we're going to see this is significant that Rabbi says it himself, but then he says it only in the name of someone else. Or we're going to show that he didn't actually, this was not actually his opinion, but rather only a quotation. All right, that will help resolve the contradiction, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So that was the Mishnah, those two opinions, and then we asked about that from the following Mishnah talking about someone who goes to the mikveh. If someone becomes tameh mideoraita, touches a dead mouse or something, so he has to go to the mikveh for sure. He has to know he went to the mikveh. It has to be a kosher mikveh. Has to have 40 se'ah. If there's any doubt about it, then the safek lehachmir. All right, that's a clear case. However, this is only betumah chamura from mideoraita. If he got tameh in a dirabanan, the rabbis made certain gezerot that a few people are tameh, like if someone, a kohen, eats a lot of impure food, we say he shouldn't eat teruma right then. In those cases, if he went to a mikveh but wasn't sure if it had 40 se'ah or not, in those cases, sifeko tahor, that's okay. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir, because that's the Stam Mishnah. Rabbi Yosef says tameh. So what we have here is that their opinions are switched, right? Whereas in our Mishnah regarding eruv, Rabbi Meir is machmir and here is mekel, and we resolved that question yesterday. But now we're going to go right to the Biyoseh. In our Mishnah regarding eruv, he's mekel, and here he says tameh, he's machmir. That is the question. And so we jump right here. Okay, kashya de Rabbi Yoseh, ad Rabbi Yoseh. So Rabbi Yoseh, we have a kind of self-contradiction. We're going to offer 3 answers. Amar Rav Huna bar Chinena, shane tum'ah, ho'il ve'yesh la ikar min haTorah. So he says tum'ah is different, because tum'ah, the essence of tum'ah is from the Torah. In other words, there's a Torah law, or in many cases, regarding someone that's tameh, and therefore the rabbis just added something on to that. And that's why the Biyoseh is machmir. He doesn't want, it could be quite confusing if I tell this certain kohen who ate a lot of food, tameh food, oh, if you went to a mikveh and you're not sure if it's good, it's all right. Then the next case where he's really tameh is not going to distinguish. So we have to do it across the board, is because it's essentially the oraita. However, techumin is the rabbanan. It's its own whole area of halacha, and so that's different. Now we ask a question about that. Shabbat nameh deoraitahi. Shabbat also essentially as deoraita, and this is an addition to the laws of the Torah. But we can answer that. The whole concept of techum Shabbat, that there is a boundary at all of that is the Rabbanan. So a person will not confuse this with other melachot that are about creating things. interesting tangent to this is that there is another law. The usual law of Tichumin is 2,000 amot, which according to most opinions is midrabanan. There is another law altogether of Tichum that is 12 mil, much bigger. And most opinions say that is deoraita. So even within Tichum, the boundary of Shabbat, there is a deoraita aspect of it. But perhaps in this case, the difference between them is so great that nobody will come to mistake the two. So that's the idea. Okay, so that's answer number one. Perhaps one is his own opinion and the other is his rabbi's opinion. That's what I alluded to before. So when the Rebbe says is machmir regarding tum'ah and the mikveh, that's his own opinion. When he said regarding eruv that lekula, that he was quoting his rabbis, but he himself did not think that. In fact, in the last formulation of the Mishnah, he is quoting someone else, so therefore, perhaps that is not his own opinion. Okay, good. And the third option of Amar Hatam Hainu Ta'amad Rabbi Yosef Ha'amed Tameh Al Cheskato Ve'ema Lo Tabal. So in the third answer is Rava is always bringing things to a more higher conceptual level. So here you can think more broadly. And so the reason why Rabbi Yosef is machmir here is that this person was tameh beforehand. That's his status quo. That's his chazakah. And so therefore, unless you know for sure that he went to the mikveh, he doesn't change the status quo. So therefore, we say that we assume that he did not go to a proper mikveh. We ask a question on this. Adraba, hamed mikveh al cheskato ve'ema lo hasar. Wait a second. That's from his perspective. From the perspective of the mikveh, remember we had a mikveh that we weren't sure if it was 40 se'ah or not. So wait a second, it's probably talking about a mikveh that once was kosher, but then as people use it, they draw water out, they splash, and so we're not sure, because right now it doesn't have 40. Did it have 40 when he went in? Why don't we assume the status quo that the mikveh, once upon a time, right, was kasher. So that we can assume that it was kasher when he went in. And so then you can use the status quo the other way around. And the answer is b'mikveh shelo nimdad. No, this is a mikveh that never was measured beforehand, and so there was no status quo, there was no chazakah. But in fact, if it did have one that did have a status quo, then you'd have two chazakot back to back, and then perhaps the outcome would be different. Okay, so we resolved Rabbi Yosef's contradiction in in three ways, and now we have a baraita tosefta, a little more about analyzing Rabbi Yosef's opinion. He says, Kesad amar Rabbi Yosef sefek eruv kasher. What is the case where Rabbi Yosef would say it is kasher? By the way, here we're assuming that it is his own opinion, that he does think that any doubt in the case of eruv is okay. So look at this case. Eruv erev bat teruma, safek mebe'od yom nitmet, safek mishechashecha nitmet. Vechen baperot, safek mebe'od yom nitkenu, safek mishechashecha nitkenu, zehu safek eruv kasher. So if I have teruma and it became tameh, I'm not sure if it became tameh before it got dark or became tameh after it got dark. That's the case of our Mishnah. Or another additional case, if I have fruit and the fruit was tebel, in other words, it was not, I didn't take maaser from it. And then I did take maaser, and I'm not sure that I take maaser before it got dark, and so therefore it was edible and it's a good eruv, or did I take maaser after it got dark? In all those cases, the eruv is good. This contrasts with these cases. Aval erev batiruma safek tehora safek temea v'chen v'perot safek nitkenu safek lo nitkenu and ze safek eruv kasher. But if I had something that was for sure teruma, and I'm not sure if it was tahor or tameh, not that it became tameh at some point, but I'm not sure from the outset when I put it there, was it tahor or tameh? Or fruit that I'm not sure if maaser was taken from it, or maaser was not taken from it at all. So this is a much deeper case of doubt. See, in the first set of cases, I know that it was fixed. I know that eventually it was good. But I just don't know when. So then I can assume that it's okay. Whereas here, I cannot assume that because I'm not even sure if it was ever fixed at all or if it was ever tahor at all. So that's the Gemara is going to analyze. Maishana tiruma, damad hamed tiruma al chizkata, ve'ema tehorahi. First, we're going to ask just on these two cases here that are both good. And so, what is the difference between these two cases that you said the sefek is okay? Regarding tiruma, you say make it the hazakah. We know that I know that when I put it there, it was tahor, and later a dead mouse fell on it, but I don't know when. So I can make a hazakah, and say the status quo beforehand was tahor, so I'll say it's tahor. So now apply that principle to the fruit. The fruit, when I first put it there, was untithed and therefore prohibited. And so that, therefore, on the same principle, I should say it remains prohibited based on the status quo beforehand. So we're going to answer that. La tema safek me be'ojom nitkenu ela ema safek me be'ojom nidme'u safek me shecha nidme'u. So now we have to reread the Tosefta. It doesn't mean that I'm not sure when it was tithed, but rather I put the tiruma there, the fruit there, and it was good. It was tithed. And then some other tebel, untithed fruit, fell into it and mixed in and made the whole thing prohibited. I'm not sure when that happened, before or after it got dark. And so we're taking the second case here and making it fit with the first case. You can see here the process of conceptualization. Rava, right, the fourth generation Amora, who introduces these conceptual categories. Then when you go and apply them back to the Tannaitic sources, now we have to modify our understanding of those sources. So it's interesting how particular cases and rules interact with each other for consistency. Okay.
Rabbi,
yep.
On this case, like I find that the question is like the answer is required, because how do you set up an eruv from tevel?
Well, it's that you cannot, because tevel cannot be eaten. But eventually, at some point, you took tithes. So the question is, I took tithes. I know where. I'm not sure what time I took them. So the presumption, so it's a sefek. So regarding eruv, you can say sefek d'Rabbanan. So sefek
you just weren't sure if it was after sunset or not.
Right, it's dark, after Sete Kochavim or not. Right. So you see, I mean, it looks like the original Tosefta was not necessarily assuming Rava's principle. It's just saying this is a simple sefek, and I know for sure it was good at the end. So I'm just not sure when. So that's a easier sefek to resolve than this one, where I'm not sure if it was ever good. Okay. So, but we're reconceptualizing it. All right, good. Rab Shmuel bar Rab Yitzchak merabuna. Hayu lefanav shete kikarot, achat temea ve'achat tehora. Ve'amar ervu li batehora b'chol makom shehi. Mahu. Okay, very interesting case. I have two loaves of bread. They look the same. One is tahor, one is tameh, but they got mixed up. I don't know which one's which, but I want to make an eruv. So what I do is I say, I'm going to make an eruv with the one that is pure, assuming they're tiruma, so they can have to be in betahara. I want to make an eruv with the one that's pure, whichever one it is. I put them side by side. I put them in some place outside the city, and that'll be my eruv, the tahor one. So what is the case? So it's also a case of doubt, and but it's a different kind of doubt, because I do have something for sure there. So let's analyze this according to both opinions. Tiba l'Rabbi Meir, tiba l'Rabbi Yosef. Tiba l'Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir, remember, is the one that was machmir in the case where I'm not sure if it happened before dark or after dark. So ad kan la kama Rabbi Meir hatam deleka tehora. Perhaps he's only machmir in that case where I do not have a piece of bread that is for sure tahor. I'm not sure if it was tahor or became tameh before. But here I have one of the loaves is for sure good. I made a condition, and so my condition can apply to that loaf, which is for sure it does exist. Odilma, afilu Rabbi Yosef la kamar elahatam, deim ita dehi tehora yada'la, aval hacha ha lo yada'la. Or perhaps Rabbi Yosef was only mekel in that case, because if there was one that was tahor, he would know about it. But here he doesn't know. He has no way of identifying which is good and which is bad. And so perhaps Rabbi Yosef would, even though he's mekel in that case, is machmir in this case. All right, so there's no way to determine if their logic would apply to this case also, but we do have an answer. Ben Rabbi Yosef, Ben Rabbi Meir, ba'enan seudah reuyam be'od yom veleka. Actually, they both of them require that has to be something that you can eat right during the day before it gets dark, and you don't have that here because the safek is I don't know which one of these is tahor. I can't eat, and the kohen cannot eat any of them, and so there is actually this. You can't make a condition like this because the kohen was not able to eat either one, and so therefore that's no good. Okay, so that's the second case of 2 loaves, and now we're going to be talking about 2 cases of ben hashemashot. Amar le, okay, be'amine Rav Amar Rav Nachman, kikar zo hayom chol ulmachar kodesh, ve'amar ervu li bazeh, mahu. Okay, let's see, what's this case? Says this, I have this loaf of bread. Today, on Yom Shishi, meaning Friday afternoon, it's a regular chol, it's secular, I can eat it. But I say, when tomorrow, meaning when Shabbat starts on Friday night, I want it to be consecrated, it's going to be Kodesh. Now, anything that's Kodesh, you can't eat, and you cannot make an Eruv out of. And then he says, I want this to be an Eruv, right? What is the law? The question is, which kicks in first? I have 2 things happening simultaneously. Michael, are you with me there? Right? So which kicks in first? If it becomes Kodesh first, and then it becomes, and then it's night, and then it becomes my Eruv, it's no good. But if it can become my Eruv a split second before it becomes Kodesh, then it would be okay. So Amar le Eruvo Eruv. It does, we don't consider it happening simultaneously. Somehow the Eruv can jump the gun and be good before the Kodesh. All right, then he asks him the opposite question. Hayom Kodesh ulmachar chol. Right now, Friday afternoon, I'm making this Kodesh. But I want it to be redeemed for money, and I want the redemption to happen tomorrow, meaning as soon as Shabbat starts. Right, whenever that split second is. This gets into his time continuous or discrete, and his ben hashemashot, a period or an exact moment. Seems to be an exact moment according to this. And so, V'amar ervu li bazeh, mahu, and it says this should be my eruv. So in this case, do we say it's Kodesh now, but perhaps it gets redeemed the split second before the eruv applies, and then it would be okay, or not? Amar le en eruvo eruv, it's no good. So ma'ishana, this is very strange because both of them, we have something happening simultaneously, and you need one to be before the other. And so why would you say okay in this case and not in that case? Anybody want to guess?
I don't fully follow.
I'll tell you the answer. Right, when you have the answer, then you'll understand the question better. Amar le lechi techol ale korah de milcha. The teacher said, go eat some salt, and then you'll understand it. Another version of this says, pay me in salt, and then I'll tell you. Pay me in salt is not as strange as it sounds. We know that in Roman times, soldiers were paid in salt, and that's the root of our word salary. Has sal in there. So he's like, if you pay me, I'll tell you. Something like that. All right, and he was only joking. He didn't have to actually pay him, but he said, this is a good puzzle, right? I'll explain to you how it works. Hayom chol ulmachar kodesh, misifeka la nachta le kedusha. If I say today, it should be regular food, and only tomorrow, meaning only when it gets dark, it will be kodesh. So now we have a sefek. When that moment, between chol and Shabbat, the holiness is not going to apply to it out of sefek. Only when it's for sure absolutely Shabbat, then it will apply. And that is a split second after my eruv sets in. So here, right, because it was chol the whole time, kind of continues the status quo, and the eruv kicks in, and only when it's definitely Shabbat a split second later, then it becomes prohibited. But I'm okay because I'm able to eat it at the time that the eruv kicks in. Whereas look at the other case. Hayom kodesh umachar chol misifeka la pak'ale kedushateh mineh. If right now it's consecrated food, it continues to be consecrated food until it's for sure absolutely Shabbat. It doesn't, the food does not change the status quo until an absolute time. And that is a split second after Shabbat starts, whereas my Eruv happens a split second before that. And so that's why in that case, so it's Kodesh the whole time until into Shabbat, and the Eruv would have needed to apply before that, and it doesn't because it's not edible before that time, and that resolves the question. Okay, so we see that the principle from before of Chazakah continuing a status quo applies here as well. All right, and now the last case regarding doubt, Tanan Hatam Lagin Tevul Yom Shemilao Min HaChavit Shel Maaser Tevel V'Amar Harei Ze Terumat Maaser LeChetechshach Devarav Kayamin. A slightly complicated case. This is from a Mishnah in Masechet Tevul Yom. You maybe didn't know there was a Masechet Tevul Yom. Okay, Tevul Yom is a very important concept. It means someone who became tameh. Let's say he touched a dead mouse, and he goes to the mikveh during the day. That person still continues to be somewhat tameh and cannot eat terumah until it gets dark. Once it gets dark, then he's okay. So he's called Tevul Yom because he's in this in-between status. He did the mikveh already, but he has to wait. This applies not only to people, but also to vessels. So imagine you have a flask here that touched a dead mouse, and when I stuck it in put it in the mikveh, and now I'm just waiting for it to become sunset. At sunset, it will become tahor. And what do? I take this and I take maaser tevel. This is I removed a tenth from the fruit and I gave it to the Levi. The Levi then has to take a maaser from that and give it to the Kohen. So I filled up this thing with tevel, maaser, that is tevel, and so the Levi has it. He still has to take terumah. He says, "Harei ze terumat maaser lechetechshach." There's nothing to do with Eruv this case so far. So devarav kayamin. That's okay. In other words, the terumah is being separated at the same at when it gets dark. When it gets dark is also the moment when this becomes tahor. So this is okay. Right? In other words, we assume that it becomes pure a split second before the terumah is separated, and therefore the terumah never touches something that is tameh. That's all right. V'im amar ervuli bazeh lo amar kelum. However, if he says this will be my eruv, that terumah that's in that it was going to be separated from this will be my eruv, that is no good. In other words, according to this, we assume that the eruv happened a split second beforehand, and it wasn't yet dark, and so the terumah was not yet collected, and so this is no good. Rava zot omeret sof hayom koneh eruv. Rava says we can prove from this that eruv kicks in at the last moment before it gets dark. In other words, the end of the day of Yom Shishi, right? If you can imagine that borderline and have Friday and then it becomes Shabbat and then Friday night. So Eruv kicks in right before the border, whereas it becomes Terumah and becomes pure right after. And that explains why this Eruv is no good. That's what Rava says. However, because if you say otherwise, if you say that Eruv starts at the beginning of the next day, so what's the matter, right? It would have kicked in, and it would have been tahor, tirumat tahor, could eat it and tehorah, and then it should have been fine. All right, last point. No, I can even explain this as being that Eruv kicks in at the beginning of Shabbat, the first moment of Friday night. But here in Eruv, the way the Eruv works, even though it kicks in at the first moment of Shabbat, it needs to be something that is prepared from before Shabbat, right? Like all food in general on Shabbat, so therefore it needs both to be both before the border and after the border. It needs to be edible at both of those moments. In this case, you would not have that. Okay, so very interesting, and we could spend a lot of time parsing out the different kinds of doubt but in each of these cases. But let's move on to the next Mishnah about retroactive decisions. מתנה אדם על עירובו ואומר, אם באו גויים מן המזרח, עירובי למערב. מן המערב, עירובי למזרח. So a person can will end up putting two meals, one 2,000 amot to the east of the city, and another piece of bread to the west of the city. And then he makes a condition. He says, if non-Jewish enemies, we'll see exactly who they are, if they come from the east, then I'm going to want to run. And I'm going to go to the west. I want to go as far as possible. So therefore, my bread on the west is going to be the one. However, if the enemies, if these bad people come from the west, then I want the bread that I put on the east to be my eruv. That way I can go 4,000 amot that way. Maybe there's another city and I can keep running. So you see that he can decide, he can put two and decide which one they will be after the fact on Shabbat itself. If these bad people end up coming from both directions, then I can decide on Shabbat which one I want to be my eruv. Right? I'll figure out which is the best route, which is the best exit. And furthermore, if the enemy's bad people don't come at all, then he says, I want neither eruv to be good. Right? I just want to be like a regular member of the city, and then I can walk around 2,000 amot in all direction. All that is permitted. All right, that's very interesting. It's like options in the stock market. Right? If it goes up, then I buy. If it goes down, then I didn't buy. That would be fun if I could do that. All right. Okay, another case. If the sage, right, there was traveling speakers, guest speakers, they would come from town to town. So if the chacham comes from the east and I want to go out and I want to greet him, then I put two eruvs on each side. Then my eruv will be to the east. If the great sage comes from the west, I want to go there and greet him, then I'm going to go to the west. If two guest speakers come, one from each direction, then I can decide. I'll look at their topic, I'll look at their title, I'll see which one I want to hear. If nobody comes, no sage comes to speak, then neither eruv applies. Okay, good. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, if one of them is his regular teacher, his own Rebbe, then we assume that he wants to go here, his own teacher. If he has two designated teachers that he always studies with, then he can choose either one. Okay, fantastic Mishnah. Let's see the analysis of it. When Rabbi Yitzchak came, he had another version of the Mishnah where it was the opposite. And in this one, it said the first case of the Gentiles coming. Over there, it said, if the Gentiles come from the east, then I want east to be my place. In other words, he wants to go towards these people coming, not away from them. And also regarding the Chacham, it's also said the opposite. If Chacham comes that way, I want to go the other way. Okay, that's strange. Why is he coming? Why does he want to go towards the Gentiles and away from the sage coming? So we explain, it's talking about different cases. Goyim agoyim lakashya ha befar hagabena ha b'mareh demata. When in our version of the Mishnah, when he's running away, that's talking about tax collectors, and so he wants to get out of there. Obviously, we're obligated to pay our taxes here in America. This is talking about in those days, taxes were not really fair. They were farmed out to basically mafia groups. So these really thugs that would be contracted by the government and would torture people and take more than was actually legal, and especially perhaps they were persecuting Jews in general, and in particular. And so therefore, in that case, it was okay to run away from these thug tax collectors. So that's what the Mishnah was talking about. The other version that Rabbi Yitzchak had was talking about when the politicians come. And politicians come, it's election day, they want to get your favor, and it's a good time to ask them, what we need. We need money for our parks. We need you to clean up things. We need this safety and so on. And so there you want to go and greet them and show them honor in order to have a good relationship with your politicians. All right, so different cases. And how about chacham ha-chacham? La kashya ha b'motiv pirke ha b'makre shema. The sage is also about different kinds of sages. The one that everyone wants to run to is the one that gives a lecture. He comes, he gives a public darasha, inspires everybody, his stories, entertaining. Everybody wants to go hear him. But the other one is the one who teaches how to recite Shema, right? And that's that's very technical stuff. And so even back then, kids didn't want to go to school to simply learn Shema. Another version says he's coming to collect the tuition, and that's why we're running away. That doesn't make so much sense because I don't have a collect tuition on Shabbat. But maybe he's reminding people. Okay, so when it's the exciting speaker, everybody wants to run towards. But when it's the elementary school teacher, then everybody wants to run away. Okay, last point for today regarding Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Imaya echad mehen, right? If one of them was his teacher, then he should go to his teacher. That's only Rabbi Yehuda. How about Tanakama? Tanakama doesn't have that rule. Rabbanan. So sometimes person wants to hear a different rabbi, not the one he's studying with all week. Want to hear the guest speaker is more exciting. And so therefore, we allow him that possibility. He could decide if he wants to study with his regular rabbi or if he wants to go and hear the guest speaker. And so tomorrow we'll delve even more into this concept of retroactive decision. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen v'amen. Thank you for joining.